Welcome back to the Bears Talk Ireland podcast with myself, Noel Dowling, as I take a look at some of the moves made by the Bears in free agency. Now, we know on Monday the illegal tampering period opened and the Bears were quick out of the blocks to get a player in who they really need to bolster that offensive line. We know last week they made two big moves, trading for guards, Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson. So now the Bears have gone out and they've got themselves a player who I don't think anybody was surprised to see, a player who had been linked with the Bears now for a week or two, and that is Drew Dalman, the centre, who was previously with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, again, we look at the moves they made with the guards, and this is an offensive line that needed massive reconstruction, given 68 sacks last season was something that just couldn't be tolerated and couldn't go on again. I know Caleb Williams, as a young rookie quarterback there, can take the blame on some of those sacks, but when your offensive line and your team gives up 68 sacks in a season, something with that line needs to be done. And Ryan Pauls and this Bears organization have gone out and made massive changes to the offensive line. As I say, they brought Drew Dalman in as that final piece in the interior as your center. He comes in on a 3-year, $42 million contract with $28 million of that guaranteed. At 26 years of age, he's a player who, if he hits, can be there for a number of years. And for me, it's important that this is a centre. He's not a guard who can convert to centre. He is a player who lives and breathes that centre position, who can help your young quarterback by calling out protections and just generally helping him develop those skills to read that defense. And I think this is a good move for the Bears to finish off that interior revamp. He's a player who, started a lot of games for the Atlanta Falcons. He did only play 9 games last season. He was injured. He had an ankle injury, but I don't think that's a problem. We've seen players like Tevin Jenkins, who you never know from week to week if they're going to be available. This was an ankle injury. This is something that's par for the course for an offensive lineman. When those two lines clash, this is something that can happen. Generally, he's a player who's been available. In 2022, he played 17 games. In 2023, he played 14 games. So I think this is a player coming in who isn't a player with injury risks. Last season is just one of those things. And also last season, PFF did grade him at a 78.8, which was the 4th best out of 40 eligible centres. Again, PFF isn't the be all and end all, but it can be a good indication that your player is doing a good job and that he's trending in the right way. So I think this is a good player who's coming in. I mean, his main strength is his elite run blocking skills. He is a good pass protector, but his pass protecting does pale in comparison to his run blocking. And I think that's very important for Ben Johnson. We've seen the offense he ran in Detroit. We know what he likes to do. We know how important the offensive line is for that offense and that run game. So he's come in, and with Ryan Pauls, they have really revamped this interior to suit what Ben Johnson wants to do. And I think that's a really good move. I think as a Bears fan, looking at this offensive line now, it's really, it's positive. I mean, year in, year out, we look at this offensive line, the Bears offensive line, and we talk about it, and, there's a lot of negativity about it, and for good reason. There are times where you just don't know what's going to happen with that line. I think this year we're going to talk about the line again because of the 3 moves made, but I think it's positive. I think we can look forward and think that, this is trending in the right direction. And as a Bears fan, again, over the years in preseason or the off season, you have no idea what that line is going to look like come week 1. I think now I feel 99.9% sure I know at least 4 starters. This is the line that I think it will be on week 1, and as I say, we have Darnell Wright on the right tackle. He's a young player the Bears love. I think he's going to be there for years to come. And we have the 3 guys in the interior who have just come in this offseason. And for me, fitness allowing, these guys are going to be starting on week 1. And in fairness to Braxton Jones at left tackle, I do think week 1 he will be the starter. I think he's a player who still has some development to do, but he has shown some positivities. And I think the Bears can take that. I think he will be a beneficiary of the moves that have been made. When you're a young left tackle, if you have somebody like Joe Tooney beside you at left guard, a guy who's had 9 years in the NFL, who's been to 6 Super Bowls and won 4 of them, who's been to multiple Pro Bowls, I think that can only benefit a young player like Braxton Jones. But in saying that, there have been some questions on Braxton Jones, and what the Bears have done in the offseason has given them a freedom in the NFL draft coming up. I mean, they're not in a position now where they need to draft for a specific position. They are in a best player available mode. And I think, if they see an O lineman in there they think can be the future at left tackle, potentially they could come in, or a Karan Amagaji who's already on the roster could be someone who could maybe have a competition with Braxton Jones for that position. So anything like that is possible, but barring injuries and fitness concerns, I do think that five will be the five that start for the Bears on week one. And again, I think it's positive. I think it's the right way to go. I think in free agency, obviously, and with trades, you never know if that player coming in will play the way they had in their previous club. And that's a risk you take. But I think what you want to see is you want to see the Chicago Bears and Ryan Poles making those positive swings. And I think that's what they've done here. They've brought in good, experienced players who should be able to hit the ground running straight away and who should benefit this team, benefit the run game, benefit a young quarterback like Caleb Williams and give him the best chance. And for me, I think this does give Caleb Williams the best chance. I think he's a young player with a lot on his shoulders, given he's the number one pick, former Heisman winner. And I think we're going to see that more this season. Even last year with the Bears giving up all those sacks, I think there were still times you watched Caleb Williams and thought, he's just done something that I don't think many quarterbacks in the NFL can do. And I think when you give him this stronger offensive line and this better offense with a head coach like Ben Johnson, I think we are going to see a lot from Caleb Williams in this season. And it's exciting to kind of keep an eye out for and to watch. And it's important that the Bears got that sorted in the trenches to solidify that, to give Caleb Williams the best chance. And obviously, we talk about the trenches on both sides of the ball being so important. And the next player to come in free agency was Dayo Odeyingbo, who was the defensive end, who was previously with the Colts. Now, I think this is a really good signing as well. He also comes in on a 3-year contract for $48 million with $32 million guaranteed. I think I've seen him people talk about him and describe him as an ascending player. And I think that's fair. I think he's a player who comes in with a lot of upside. He's 25 years of age. I think he can still be disruptive now. I think he can still come in now and get after the quarterback and be productive on that defensive line. But I think he's a player who over time absolutely can continue to develop. He has an excellent physical profile for a Dennis Allen defense. He's the kind of size that a Dennis Allen likes at defensive end, 6'6", 286 pounds. He can be disruptive in the trenches. He can get after the quarterback. Last season, his stats were 3 sacks with 17 quarterback hits. Now, that was a downgrade from the previous year when he had got 8 sacks. I think obviously the Bears will look at that. They'll think that maybe they can bring him in, pair him with a Montez Sweat. If Montez Sweat takes a lot of attention, that then leaves Odeyingbo, free to get in there, get after the quarterback and be disruptive. And again, I think he's a young player who, can come in this year and contribute, but is being seen as a kind of a long-term player who can come in and develop. Now, we make that move at defensive end. I don't think that stops the Bears making more moves at defensive end. We know we have Austin Booker then coming up next on the depth chart. He's a young player. I think the Bears have some hopes in him going forward. They'll be hoping next season that he'll be able to start making those next steps forward. But I still think that position group is just a little bit thin, and I think you will probably see somebody coming in the NFL draft. But again, I think the two starters that are in there, Sweat and Odeyingbo, can be really good players together. I'm excited to see how this young man comes in and helps this defensive line. And I think once you get that defensive line sorted, it makes such a big difference for the secondary. And I think the Bears are on the right way to getting things sorted. And another reason for that is the next player to come in, and that's Grady Jarrett, who is a defensive tackle who also, like Dalman, was at the Atlanta Falcons. And he was actually surprisingly released the morning of free agency. I think that got a lot of Bears fans a little worried. They thought that the Falcons were trying to do some cap magic, maybe to keep Dalman in-house. That's not the way it worked out. And both players end up being Chicago Bears. And I think, again, this is a positive. This is a really experienced player. He's 31 now. He will be 32 when the season starts. Obviously, you would have liked to got him at a younger age. But still, he's a player who last season played in 17 games and played in over 60% of the snaps. So he's a player that still has a bit left in the tank. He finished with 53 combined tackles, 30 solo and 23 assisted with 2.5 sacks. So again, he's a player who can be disruptive. He's a player who can make things happen on that defensive line, getting after a quarterback. And I think obviously what Jared brings as well as that kind of disruptive nature on the field is a leadership and a mentality that he can come in with these younger players around him. We know we have a Javon Dexter, Zach Pickens. These are young players who are still trying to develop as NFL players. I think a player like Grady Jarrett can come in, as well as doing what he does on the field. Off the field, he can work with these guys, show them what they need to be doing as young NFL, defensive tackles, show them what they need to do to improve their game and to get better. And I think for all those reasons, on the field, off the field, this is a player that brings a lot. He brings veteran leadership, and he will help solidify this defensive front. If you look at his achievements in Atlanta before he left, he finished top 10 in the Falcons' history in a number of categories. He was third in tackles for loss. He was first in quarterback hits. He was 10th in sacks, which 36 and a half sacks. So this is a player who can be productive. And for me, he is a good signing for this Bears defense. So all in all, I think looking at the three players brought in and the two players they traded for last week, the Bears have completely revamped two very important positions on this team. Two positions that will help this team challenge in the NFC North. We know that there are three good teams in the North. We know they won a lot of games last year in the regular season, didn't get to where they wanted in the playoffs, but still to go from worst to fourth in this division won't be easy. But I think the Bears have the nucleus there of good players who can help them win games. And I think these moves now just help solidify that. And I think they absolutely will be able to challenge in the NFC North. Again, won't be easy. You're up against some really good teams, but the Bears now, I think, have the experience in there, along with the new coaching staff. We mentioned Dennis Allen, Ben Johnson coming in. These are guys who, Dennis Allen's been there and done it as a head coach and a defensive coordinator. Ben Johnson, we're going to find out as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, he is a guy who, made the NFL stand up and take notice. He's getting his chance now in a place where it really feels like he wanted to be, which also really helps. So it's exciting times for the Bears. I love what they've done in free agency so far. We'll keep an eye out and see where it goes from here. We'll keep an eye out and see where it goes in the draft. And do keep an eye out on this channel. I know it's a new channel, but we're going to have a lot of content coming out between now and the draft. And please do like and subscribe if you enjoy what you see. And I really do appreciate people taking the time to watch and listen. Again, as a new channel, the interaction really does just help us. And until next time,